Hey guys, Mtast here, and today we're going to be going over how to beat the 100k Nightfall. Now before you begin, there's a couple things you have to have or else it's impossible, and that is going to be anti-barrier rounds on either your auto rifle or your hand cannon, as well as the overload rounds which you can get on a bow or an auto rifle. If you don't have these, I don't believe it's actually possible to kill all the enemies needed to then get 100k points. You're going to barely scrape by at the 950 power level Nightfall. Don't worry if you're not there quite yet, you have until Tuesday, but if you want to complete it this week, you have to do it on the 950 power. You literally can't get enough points on the 920 and below. This one, we're just scraping by with 100,106 points. Now, we get a few more after that, but if you are past the 20-minute timer, you'll actually start losing points. So this has to be done within 20 minutes, or you cannot beat it. Here are a few must-have things so you can kill all the enemies to get enough score, as well as to deal with match game, which means you have to match the element of the shield to really break it in a reasonable amount of time. If you don't have matching elements, you're never going to beat this thing. So number one, overload rounds for the Minotaurs, anti-barrier rounds for the Hobgoblins, you need arc damage for Harpies, void damage for other Minotaurs, and then hopefully a Well of Radiance and a bubble for survivability, as well as the damage buffs that they provide. If you can run a couple of Titans with the bubble, that's going to be great because you'll have a bunch of void damage for all the enemies. Now, a quick tip before you begin, you might want to consider getting void resistance, minor resistance, major resistance, as well as the boss resistance, because these will make you a lot tankier in a lot of these situations, and if you die and you waste time, it's going to make it very hard to do this. Now, when I did this, I was at 933 power level. The beginning of the mission that I'm going to show you is identical in the 950 mission, but I did it on the 920 quickly because I just didn't have the footage from the 950. I'm going to explain what you do at the beginning and give you some tips along the way from the original 950 Nightfall video. Now, again, to reiterate, the beginning here, I play a little bit riskier than I would have if it was the 950, because if you make a mistake, you pretty much die, unless you're like 935, 940 power level. You're going to want to take out all these trash mobs. I personally like to focus fire them because they are very, very annoying with their AoE damage, and then we dealt with the barrier champion. After you get it weak, it will pop up a barrier, and you need to use barrier rounds to stop it from regenerating all of its health. This will stun the enemy and make it much easier to kill, but this is really just a stand on the plates and slay. Now, you can see us standing on both plates. Do not do this in the 950! You will get destroyed. There are so many enemies that'll spawn around you that can one-hit you, you're dead. Don't stand on both plates at the same time, only do one plate at a time. I apologize, I don't have that in the footage. Just trust me on this one, do one at a time. Now there's going to be another Hobgoblin that spawns up here. We were able to take it out pretty easily, and then you're going to want to just clear out all the trash. If you want to throw a bow down here, if you have it, it could be very good, but honestly, this is a great time to spam all of your grenade abilities and just wave clear all of the enemies that pop up. So you need to kill pretty much everything. Don't even leave one of these little goblins alive because you're going to run into issues with your score. Literally, one goblin can be the difference between getting 100k and not getting it. So don't be an idiot, don't pass by enemies, but you gotta make sure you're clearing efficiently. Now, you're gonna wanna have your heavy for the bigger enemies. You're gonna want your, use your super when there's a bunch of enemies around, but if you're taking forever just to kill basic mobs because you're being really stingy on the ammo, then you're going to literally run out of time and you're going to tank your score by busting past that 20-minute timer. The 20-minute timer is going to drain thousands of points, pretty damn rapidly. So, don't be dicking around and communicate with your team. You guys got to move forward at all times if possible. If an enemy is kind of weak, start moving towards the next area. Just kind of finish it up as you're going past it. Don't stand still. And, make sure you're advancing when you're reloading and just doing anything you can to keep propelling forward. Now, if you need to take 1 or 2 extra seconds for these traps, do it, because there's, 7 or 8 seconds before you can get revived if you end up dying, and depending where you die, it can actually be a pretty large time sink. Dying to these and not reviving is around 30 to 40 seconds that you're out of commission. Let your teammate that's using Arc kill all of the harpies that are on top of these platforms, and in my opinion, it's better to just slay out and kill these easy trash mob goblins instead of using supers and bows just yet. I used my bow a little bit early, but it's not that big of a deal. It's a pretty easy room. However, in a little bit, there's going to be more harpies, there's going to be some minotaurs, and it's going to get a little bit more antsy. I recommend saving the bow for around this portion where there's more enemies starting to spawn, they're all kind of coming out of the portals. It can just get a little bit more hairy. In my opinion, this is going to be a fast, clear room. There's nothing else to really say here other than use the proper elements when you see them, don't waste time dying, and if you can kill a whole bunch of enemies with a super, go for it. You're going to generate orbs, you're going to smash through this faster, and that just means you can get to the next part that might take a little bit more time. Make sure you're timing these traps effectively and you're not, murdering yourself, getting sliced by lasers, but the final drop-down one, there's one tiny little trick that I don't know why people haven't caught on to this. When you look at it, there's a barrier that opens up and closes. When it's open, you can pretty much fall in there near the last few seconds and always make it through. So once the light is on is actually when you're going to want to drop down. If you try to time it for when it closes, sometimes you get your head clipped and you get murdered. Now this room is very hairy. Focus on taking out hobgoblins at a distance because they can be very frustrating. Your Arc player should focus on harpies, but this is a section where you can die a lot if you're not careful. If a hobgoblin is left up, you're going to get sniped. These harpies can do some very dirty sustained damage, but there's going to be some minotaurs spawning. Now, there's an Overlord Minotaur to your left that you're going to have to use those Overload rounds on, but every time you proc one of these altars, there's actually going to be more enemies that spawn in the middle. It can get very hairy. There's a lot of shields. There's a lot of minotaurs. There's also going to be hydras, and these hydras will nuke you. They will absolutely dumpster your team. So if you can focus fire the hydras, do it. Now there's another overload enemy pushing us, and you can see we are getting destroyed by the hydra. You gotta be very careful with this thing. It is 1 or 2 shots and you are dead, no matter your power level. The lower, the worse it's going to be. Even at 930, it's like 1 shot and you're dead. Luckily, we get the revive here, but I highly recommend prioritizing this Hydra because it shoots so fast you can end up wiping over and over and over again. It's also worth noting this is probably the best time to use a bubble. If you have a couple of characters that have the bubble, this is it. This is the time, because it's going to protect you from a lot of this damage while still capturing the plate, and it'll give you that damage buff to deal with some of these high damage enemies. You can see I'm just getting wrecked. If you're out, if you're exposed, you're dead in this room. So pop those bubbles on the different altars and you're going to make it much easier on yourself. Now, this next room can play out in a couple of different ways. If you get really unlucky, the wanted enemy can sometimes rush you as you approach the first altar. It makes it so you kind of need to deal with it because he will just murder your team if you don't, but he isn't worth a lot of points. Now, we got lucky on this one. He kind of backed off and he ends up disengaging and disappearing, which is awesome. Then you don't have to waste all your time on it. But if he rushes you, just try to burn him down. Another big problem is there are a lot of hobgoblins here, and there are 2 cyclopses. The cyclopses will one-hit you, so it was my job to kill these from a distance. There's one on the far left, there's some hobgoblins in the middle, and there's another cyclops on the right. Take these out as soon as you can so you don't die one stupid one-bang death, and then you can move from altar to altar as a team. There's not anything too crazy about this room other than the overload enemies that are on the altars, but other than that, it's just a slay and roam as a team kind of room. You don't really need a bubble, you don't really need a well, but those will speed things up for you, so if you have them, you're off cooldown, everyone's got their supers, make sure to use them because it's just going to make sure you're in that final boss room with enough time. Make sure to use the overload rounds on these juicy minotaurs on the final 2 platforms, and once you activate all of them, make sure to kill the Hydra before it kills you. Again, Hydras are extremely lethal, and you gotta get those hot points. Now, the boss room's coming up, but don't be an idiot and just jump down, because If you don't kill these goblins, you probably won't have enough points to win. You won't have the 100k. You just gotta kill everything. Don't risk it. It's only a few seconds. Use those recluses, mountaintops, snipers. I don't care what you gotta do, but don't leave these guys, and they might even drop you some heavy ammo. Now, even if you could kill this boss instantly, you don't want to. You want to make sure that he roams around the room like normal. You activate all the plates like normal because you need the enemies to get the points. If you don't do it, if you somehow melt him, then you can't get enough points to complete this. Do your damage, make sure you make it to each plate, and you'll definitely have enough points. Now, the boss can one-hit you and he will shoot you with pinpoint precision. Not only that, but he's got an area of effect fire attack. That will instantly kill you almost every time because void damage is buffed. This is a very, very wipe-heavy room if you're not careful, and you should not pop out unless you're behind cover. You're going to see them die again here, and I'm able to thankfully save this because of the respawn timer going off after the fact. This is a tough, tough room. You should not be popping out unless you are absolutely sure he's not aiming at you. Always use cover, play it safe, make sure everyone's up. Go use invis if you've got it. Whatever you gotta do. But if you're out in the open, you're going to get murdered. There is just too many threats in this. There is too many things that can go wrong, so you need to play it safe. You have around 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, depending on your speed, to do this fight. With the plates, with the enemies that you need to clear, and with the average damage, I'm guessing you'll have enough time even if you play it relatively slow. All of these altars have some sort of cover, but this is going to be another prime time to use the bubble. If you aren't quite sure when to pop it, I would save it for the second set of altars because that's going to be when the most enemies spawn. It's probably safest to save your supers for this situation so you can just clear everything as fast as you can. I used my bow here, we AoE'd everything down, and then we popped a bubble on the other one because there's a bunch of minotaurs and it's just risky business. Now I went invis to just make sure we're getting progress here. We didn't want to run out of time, but even that little push is a little spooky. If you've got the bubble, place it a little early. It's going to have enough duration to clear everything out, grab the point, and you don't got to stress too much about getting one banged, especially if you have the Blessing of Light, the overshield from something like the Helm of Saint 14 from your Titan. Now, the Weapons of Light is going to give you a nice boost of damage too for the final boss. Lay into him, kill him, get that DPS going, and I am convinced you will murder this easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you soon, my friends. Bye-bye.